Welcome to the MSJC Internet Authoring Videocast.
In this video, you'll be learning how to complete Guided Practice 11A. In order to complete Guided Practice 11A, we're going to need to start our project in NetBeans a little bit differently. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the New button here. And when we get to the name and location screen, I'm going to call this MyShapes. What our goal is here is to have you create a couple of classes that basically allow the user to define the size of a rectangle and the size of a box. And then from our main method, which we'll place in a separate class, we will call those, we'll create instances of those classes and use them in there. So this is all going to be part of a project that we're going to call MyShapes. So realize then that MyShapes is going to be the class that has our main method in it. So let's go ahead and just click Finish from here. And now what we want to do is come over into the Projects tab and right-click on our project name, create a new Java class, and name it Rectangle. So it'll be in the rectangle.java file that we actually create the definition of the rectangle, and then it'll be in the MyShapes, which has the main method that will then implement an instance of our rectangle and use it there. So now that we have that set up, let's go into our public class rectangle here. Now it's important to note here that you can only have one class per file. Our class is rectangle, and that matches the name of the file. So that's a requirement for your code to operate correctly. Now, if you have been reading the lecture material or watched the lecture video, you notice that we created a class called fractions, and in there we had the data section where we created variables of num and den, which was for the numerator and the denominator. So those are the components that make up a fraction. So in a rectangle, what we need to have is a length and a width. And we want to make those private because we don't want the user of our class to be able to directly access these data values, these variables, also known as fields, by the way. So we make them private, and then we'll create a public method or a public interface that allows the user of the class to manipulate the length and the width variables within our data section. Now there's a couple of ways that we could do this. We could create a constructor here, but I'm going to just start out with a custom method. We'll call it setRectangle. And then it's going to accept a parameter that's going to be an int for length and an int for width. So these will be our formal parameters then that get passed into our custom method here. I forgot to add my public void in front of that. Okay, so inside of here, we'll use the keyword this, which is referring to the rectangle class. And we'll do this length. That refers to then the actual length variable up here. And that will be equal to then the length formal parameter that gets passed in when the user calls our setRectangle method. So this value here will be the value here that then gets assigned to our variable length. And then we'll do the same thing for width. And assign the formal parameter width to the rectangle's width variable. Now what we want to do is go ahead and create another public method here that will return an int. We'll call it area. So it's going to calculate then the area of our rectangle. And so that'll be the calculation of, let's see, what the return keyword there, and then return this length times this width. So let's go ahead and test this now. We'll go back to our MyShapes class, which has our main method here. Go ahead and clean all this up. Put in our name, date, and project name. So inside of main then, what we want to do is go ahead and create a couple of instances here of our rectangle. So let's go with rectangle R1. That'll be equal to a new rectangle. And remember, we didn't create a constructor class in there, but we're calling the constructor class here because it does exist. Because remember that the compiler, aka the Java virtual machine, if you don't create a constructor method in your class, your custom classes, it will do that for you. So you only really need to have a constructor class if you need to do something particular in the creation of your class. When we create an instance of that class, if something special needs to be done in the creation of the class, like values being passed into it and manipulated, then you would create the custom constructor class. But in this case, we don't really need it. As I say, the compiler will do that for us because we created a separate method which is actually going to take the values that we want to pass in and manipulate length and width with. Now we'll use our instances here, and we'll go ahead and use the set rectangle method, pass in a value to the R1 of 3 and 4. And then for R2, we'll use set rectangle, pass values in there of 5 and 6. Then we'll generate the output using system.out println. Put the area of R1 is plus R1.area and then we can do the same thing it's a lowercase a for our method name. We can do the same thing for our R2 now, so I'll just make a copy of this and we'll change this to R2 and R2. Go ahead and run it. And there you can see we've got the area of R1 is 3 times 4, so 12, and the area of R2 is 5 times 6, which is 30. So what I'd like you to do for this guided practice is now add, so right click on MyShapes, go to New, click on Java class, and add one more new class in here, call it Box. And in the Box class, I want you to take in a length, a width, and a height, and then create a custom method for that, just like we did for rectangle, and then also create a custom method to find the area, which would be the length times the width times the height of your box. So that's it for now. Until next time, happy coding. If you liked this video, please click the like button and leave us a comment down below. I also would appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, click the notification bell so that you'll be notified when new videos are posted.